This video is for founders and marketeers that are looking to turn those simple website visitors into actual leads using AI. Concretely, I'll be showing you how you can build a lead generation quiz using state-of-the-art AI tools and vibe coding, of course. I typically like to make my tutorials pretty hands-on, so I'm not going to show you some fluffy made-up use case, but we'll be looking at a use case from a company called Madison Partners, which is a data and AI maturity consultancy, and that builds one of those lead generation quizzes using two tools, Weavely.ai and n8n. So we'll be looking at a real example on how you can actually deploy this into production and start generating leads. But first, in case you're not convinced that you actually need a lead generation quiz, we basically all know those boring white papers that you can get access to by giving your email address, and then you get them in your email or you can download them from a specific website. They're okay, but they're not great. So typically your conversion rates are going to be around 10 and 15%, and that's leagues below what you can get with a lead generation quiz. The typical conversion rate of a lead generation quiz is about 40%, but we've seen cases of conversion reaching 50 to even 60%. Of course, as a website visitor, it's a lot nicer to be able to have an interactive tool that asks me a question and to get a personalized report out of it instead of just a simple white paper, which is going to be the same for everybody. So that sort of justifies those higher conversion rates. But besides this, sort of the cherry on the cake or the icing on the cake is the fact that you get zero-party data. So essentially, your website visitor is going to give you data about their problem, and that makes it easier for you to make sure that you can solve that problem and to reach out to them and tell them how you're going to solve the problem. So you get more conversions, but you can also get better data about your leads. Okay, enough talking. Let's look at that Madison Partners case that we'll be using as an example on how to build a lead generation quiz with AI. So this is their website. It's about like data and AI. It's a consultancy business. And when you go to the website, you get this pop-up saying like, oh, do you want to do a data and AI quick scan? It's quick, and you get a tailored plan for what's next, right? So that's sort of the hook, like, oh, I want a tailored report on how I am on data and AI. And when you press start to scan, it actually brings you to the first part of this lead generation quiz, which is the actual quiz. So it's a simple quiz built in Weavely.ai. It's sort of on brand, right? So it has their logo here, it has a nice background, and it asks you a number of self-assessment questions on where you stand when it comes to data and AI. So we're not going to go through the questions itself because unless you happen to be a competitor of Madison Partners, these won't be relevant to your business. So you go through them, it's multiple choice, so it's really easy and it's not really heavy on you to sort of reply to them, 3 minutes, right? So you go through them, you reply, and then of course at some point in the end, you'll be asked for your first name, your last name, and your business email, right? So if I enter my email address and my names right here, of course, this is the part where this is needed, otherwise you don't have a lead generation quiz at all. And then I press submit, and I'm gonna get my report in the mail, which is tailored to the responses that I gave. So this is the email that I get from Madison Partners automatically when I fill out the lead generation quiz. So it says, thank you for taking the time to complete it. If you have any questions, I immediately get a contact in here, right? So that's a first step where I can contact Madison Partners as a respondent to the quiz. And then of course the important part is this report here, which is tailored to the responses that I gave. So the data and AI maturity quick scan, and then it says basically I'm in the dark level 1. I didn't respond very highly on most of the questions, and it tells me what I can do better, where sort of the benefits are when I'm higher on the data maturity level, the ROI of all of this. So it puts Madison Partners forward as an expert in the field, but it also just gives me a couple of tips and tricks on how I can do some of the things that they will be doing by myself. So that's lead generation quizzes 101. You want to provide value in the report that you send to people, and you want to make sure that it's as tailored as possible. Okay, the question now, of course, is how do we actually build this using AI tools? So the first part of the quiz is the actual quiz itself, which in the case of Madison Partners was built using Weavely.ai. So Weavely.ai, it's a pretty simple, pretty intuitive AI-powered form builder. So essentially you build branded forms by prompting or giving documents. And this is the form that they've built So you give it a prompt and then it generates you this form, which you can later tweak by hand if you want, or you can sort of change the layout and the design that it generated for you. So basically your run-of-the-mill form builder, but then supercharged with AI features built in. I won't go into too much details on how you use Weavely.ai. It's intuitive on the one hand, and on the other hand, I have other tutorials on how you can get started with that. I'll leave a link at the top of this video right here. But let's move on to the second part, which is n8n. So Weavely.ai is going to capture all of your data and keep it. But of course, you still want to generate those reports. You want to calculate scores based on what people answer. And all of this has been vibe coded inside of n8n. As always with n8n workflows, if they're any good, they look pretty scary to get into, but we'll move through it step by step. So the start of our flow is this webhook here. Essentially, Weavely allows you to install webhooks on your forms, meaning that you can specify Weavely that it needs to call into a webhook with the results anytime a new form submission has been made. So this is what we're seeing here. Weavely is essentially telling us, for this form, I've gathered these responses, and then you get an ID of each question of that specific form. So we have the ID of the question and the response that was given by our website visitor from the webhook. Of course, this doesn't give us the actual questions that are asked, so it's only an ID. So in the next step, what we'll be doing is we'll be calling into the Weavely API. So I'll leave a link to the help desk at the bottom of the video here, but basically you can ask Weavely to give you all of the fields of a specific form. So in this case, the lead generation quiz, it's going to tell us, like, okay, these are all of the questions in the quiz with the ID, but also with the label. And the way that we're going to use this is that we're going to combine the responses that we get with the ID of the question from the webhook together with the text of the actual question into something which is coherent and that we can sort of reason and score. So what I mean here is this is the output. We get the ID of the question, the text of the question itself, and then the answer that was given by our user. So we did this with a simple piece of JavaScript code, which has been completely vibe coded. So essentially just giving it the output of both nodes and telling it, can you just combine this into one JSON that we can further use down the workflow. So we have our answers and our questions. And then the next part is calculating the score. So again, this has been vibe coded. In this case, it's very specific for the Madison Partners case. This will be completely different for yours, but based on the responses that we get for different questions, we rank the respondents from L1 to L5, which is level 1 to level 5, based on how mature they are on a data and AI perspective. So this will look completely different for you, but you can just essentially use vibe coding, either ChatGPT or have it using the built-in n8n vibe coding tools to generate you a piece of JavaScript that calculates the score and ranks the respondent. So once the respondent is ranked, what we then do is we switch based on that level. So as I said, there's 5 levels, right? Level 1 through level 5. So we check the outputs of the score. And then based on that score, we're going to fetch the report from Google Drive. So there's 5 pre-made reports, each custom for each specific level. And then depending on the level of the respondents, we use a GET. So this is just an HTTP request to the Google Drive to get the report PDF, which we then turn into a base64 string and send via email. So in the send email thing here, we're going to call into the API, of course, of the email provider, and then we're going to pass the base64 string of our report together with the response, so the email of the respondents, which we get, of course, by the fact that they answered the email question in the original lead generation quiz. So this is how you go from a Weavely generated form to using n8n to calculate your scores and to fetch your reports and to then actually sending an email. Now you could go further. You might say like, okay, but this is not that personalized. There's like 5 standard reports. We could have used ChatGPT here to generate a report which is a lot more customized based on responses. But then of course the problem is that you never know the report that you'll be sending. That you can try to tailor the prompt of ChatGPT to make sure that it doesn't go off the rails too much. But this is a safe approach, like you know what's inside of the reports, that there's no false data in there, and we send that to the respondent. The respondent is happy because they got a report that they can use to talk about it with their team, and you've got, as a Madison Partner agency, great data on your leads, you know exactly where they are, where you need to help them, and you can reach out in a warm introduction with hands-on advice to help them to get better. So if you're looking to get started yourself, Weavely.ai is a completely free tool. n8n is a paying tool, but there's free alternatives. So you could use Make, or you can use other automation tools, or you can completely vibe code the reporting backend part of this, which is also possible. It's going to be a bit more technical, but it's definitely possible. Thanks for tuning in, and if you like these kind of videos, don't forget to like and subscribe.